Hey, what's up, guys? So today I want to talk about OHM, one of my favorite cryptos, and hopefully after this video, it'll be one of your favorites too. It's one of my favorites for a lot of reasons. It's not easy to understand. There's a lot of moving pieces, but I hope to demystify it for you and to help you come to a better understanding of what OHM is, what Olympus DAO is, and how it works. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is something called Pareto's principle. So this is my first quote-unquote deep dive video. The others were more how-tos. This is more of the what. So this is going to explain what OHM is, but in all my deep dive videos I want to start off with just two really quick things that I was taught by a business mentor early on when I got into business. One of those is the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. Basically, what the 80-20 rule says is that 80% of your results come from 20% of the causes. So an Italian sociologist came up with this, and he found that in general rule of thumb, 80% of a nation's income was in the hands of 20% of the population. But when you extrapolate this, you'll notice that it's almost, if you pay attention, sort of like when you buy that new red car and all of a sudden you see the exact same red car everywhere. If you pay attention to this rule, you will see it almost everywhere in your life. You almost can't help but see it. So what we found is 20% of the criminals commit 80% of the crimes. 20% of the drivers cause 80% of all traffic accidents. 80% of pollution originates from 20% of all factories. You'll notice you probably only wear, 20% of your clothes 80% of the time, and on and on. The reason I want to bring this up is because there's so much you can learn in crypto, especially when you're talking about something like OHM. There's so much you can learn, how it works, what it does, down to the finest detail. But kind of what I've found is my principle, my philosophy is learn just enough to make money. And then later on, if you want to get your PhD in it, go ahead. Okay, so what I mean by that is we're going to study the 20% that's going to give you 80% of your results, basically, is where I'm going with this. Last thing I want to show you is, I was shown this also by my mentor as well. Whenever you get into something new in life, whether it's crypto, whether it's you start a new diet, you start a new business, you start a new relationship, you start a new job, whatever it is, we tend to typically picture the best possible scenario, the best possible outcome. And we think that success is a straight line up. In reality, success is up to the side, you're going to go down, you're going to go left, you're going to go right. You're going to go through all these emotional roller coasters, all these bumps in the road, but at the end of the day, as long as the curve is going up, you're winning. So just looking at OHM really quick, just from a tokenomic economic perspective. Okay, CoinGecko is the website that I prefer. You'll look at the market cap, all this kind of fun stuff. We actually hit over $1 billion in market cap last night, and we've dropped a little today, which is fine. OHM is inflationary, and I'm going to discuss why later. That's not as big of a deal as you might think it may be. It's not as much of a concern. Okay, you can look at all-time high. We were $1,400 back in April. I expect us to not only match that, but far exceed it. So I think, and people would say, well, that's a premium. Well, it is, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Just to show you something really quick. I don't do much TA, but the price dropped all the way down to like 200. Where were we? We were at about $230 exactly 1 month ago. What was actually playing out is a big head and shoulders pattern. If you don't know what a head and shoulders pattern is, you see this area right here, and then you see this area up here, and then you see this area here. What you have here is, if you picture this whole pattern, it looks like a head, big head, left shoulder, right shoulder. So it looks like a person is essentially where that comes from. So you can see big left shoulder, these three rises, well, 3 or 4, indicate a head, and then you got the right shoulder, that caused us to come all the way back down. So anytime you get to the bottom of the right shoulder in a head and shoulders pattern, likely you're going back up. Almost nothing's guaranteed, almost every time. Okay, so I was not concerned about the price going down. I mean, look at that. If you had bought a 162 in May, you imagine how far you'd be ahead by now. But I wasn't concerned about it. It was just retesting it. Okay, so when you kind of see these things play out in real time, you don't get as concerned about it. I just wanted to bring that up because people want to know why was the price going down? Why was it going down? We were just retesting, and we were coming back down to the bottom of that right shoulder. Okay. But you can come on here and you can see all the information. You can add it right into MetaMask if you'd like. You got the contract address right there. So at the risk of promoting myself, which is not my intention here, I wanted to go over my post that I made back on August 9th. It was one of the more popular ones on Twitter, I believe, based on the activity, and got a lot of really nice comments because there are some things that I want to go over here. Now, there are some corrections I want to make to some things I said and add some other thoughts into this, okay? All the links you see here, all the stuff will be in the description below. So and I'll also link to this tweet as well, so you don't get a chance to get to these links as you see them on the screen. They'll be in the tweet itself. So what is OHM and Olympus DAO? Now, I did start talking about stablecoins here. I talked about how we obviously know the fraud that Tether is. I don't have to go into that. But USDC is typically one of the more safer stablecoins, you might say. By the way, USD Coin not too long ago, just recently added treasuries into their backing. So basically, into their pegging system, I should say. So basically, everybody in USD Coin's now vulnerable to a treasury market collapse. Not a good thing, by the way. That's not good. That's not on here. I did see that not too long ago. But USD Coin is a little more centralized than people realize. There were some criminals that had over $100,000 frozen at the request of law enforcement. So if you did not think that was possible, think again. It is very possible. Okay. So I kind of go into here what stable coins are. Now, I did make a mistake right here. I will point out, this is what I said. I said, quote, OHM is the first ever crypto project aiming to create a stable coin that is, number one, not pegged to the US dollar or any sovereign currency, and number two, is algorithmic and not controlled by a centralized entity. It's backed by crypto assets in a treasury. It's not pegged to them like others. So OHM is not a stable coin. I think I was talking about stable coins here. I had stable coins on the brain. Okay. OHM is attempting to be a reserve currency, not a stable coin. However, what I will say is that it does need to maintain some sort of stability at some point. It's got to have it's got to find an equilibrium. If you read right on Olympus DAO's own documentation right here, their goal is to build a policy-controlled currency system, which is controlled by the DAO. In the long term, we believe this system can be used to optimize for stability and consistency. See, stability and consistency. You can't have a reserve currency that's $600 today and $400 a week from now. I know most cryptos like that. I'm just making the point that at some point in this journey, and OHM is still very new, so I'm not unaware of that. But at some point, it will need to reach some sort of equilibrium, some sort of stability. You need to have a unit of account and a medium of exchange for currency that is not that volatile, right? So I think that's kind of where I was going with that statement. But it is not a stable coin. Okay, the Treasury, there's a Treasury that backs OHM. It's important to know it is not pegged, it's backed, meaning, how could I put this? So let's say, for instance, I don't even know if this is a very good example, but I'm going to go with it. So if I had a car, okay, and I'm going to sell you a car, let's just say, for easy math, the car is 18 grand. I'm charging you $18,000 for the car. And I said, you know what? I'm going to back the car's value with gold. So I'm going to back it with 10 ounces of gold, 10 1-ounce bars of gold, let's just assume for the moment, easy math, gold's $1,800. So it's backing the value. It's not that I'm pegging the car's value to whatever gold is. It's that it's backing its value. There's a very big difference between something determining the value and something backing the value. Okay, now my car may go up to 20 grand, but if I'm backing it with 10 ounces of gold, I'm backing it with 10 ounces of gold. It's just that you're going to pay a little bit more of a premium for that car. You get what I'm saying? So OHM is backed. It is not pegged to a price. Okay? Now, the Treasury contains DAI, Frax, Sushi Swap, and recently Ethereum was added as of last month. If OHM's price drops, it will be controlled algorithmically, although I will say it has to drop like below $1 for that to happen. However, you have a backing. I didn't look it up before making a video. I want to say it's around $29 right now in the Treasury, which means it could theoretically drop below $29, yes, but the arbitrage play would be so clear to people. It would be a wick. It would get bought up so quickly. I don't even think that would ever happen. But if in theory it did, the clear arbitrage is if something's backed up to $29 and it drops to 20, why would you not buy that? I mean, that's like a guaranteed return, right? I hope that makes sense. It's actually rising around, I want to say it's 25 to 30 cents every day, the Treasury. It might even be faster than that. I mean, that Treasury is growing like crazy, by the way. At the time that I made this post, it was backed by 73% DAI, 25% Frax, 0.0044% ETH, and 0.0042% Sushi. Okay? Give or take equals 100%. So Olympus DAO owns its own liquidity for OHM. This is a much bigger deal than people realize. Okay, a lot of, well, I'll get into that later, but basically a lot of cryptos will actually have to go to a third party to get their liquidity, right? OHM owns their own liquidity, and part of that has to do with the way the Treasury system works, bonds, and so forth. And I'll also throw something in here at the end about Olympus Pro as well. That was literally, I think that was announced just yesterday. Okay, so OHM is not fixed. Obviously, we mentioned at the beginning it's inflatable, and that makes sense for your ecosystem because you have these rebases. Well, whereas if you got 90 at this point, it was 91%. We'll look up some of these statistics when we're done here to get a more recent picture. But if you got over 91%, let's just say, of the total supply locked up in staking, those rewards have to come from somewhere, right? You don't have much difference there, so you have to have an inflatable measure, okay? So it's minted and handed out as part of the APY, basically. So as more OHM gets minted, they get locked up because it's an auto compound interest system, okay? So as the people go out into the open market, and sell, this allows the circulating supply to be burned if the price drops too sharply, and the ability to make more makes sense to be able to pull this economic system off, essentially. Okay, so you know those go out into the open market as people are selling them, and that allows the circulating supply to increase. So if OHM is not pegged and it actually is backed, as we said, what's the deal with the price being so volatile? And what's the deal with the price being so much higher? So if I was just an average Joe and I'd say, okay, this is backed up to 29 bucks, why should I pay $539.16 for it as of right now? It's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. So there's something called risk-free value, RFV. You've probably seen RFV floating around. And to simplify this, think of it as a floor price. So there's a certain number of assets, as we talked, DAI, Frax, ETH, Sushi, that back OHM. As we said, remember the analogy? The price of OHM right now is higher than the amount that is backing it. So you're buying OHM at a little bit of a, well, I wouldn't say a little bit, at quite a bit of a premium in order to get that yield. Because if you do a little bit of research on how compound interest works, that Einstein says, the eighth wonder of the world, those who understand it earn it, those who don't pay it. That is a very true statement. And you understand Warren Buffett has done a lot of talks and has written a lot about compound interest, but even taking them out of it. I mean, you'll see compound interest is graded on a bell curve. It's almost like stacking interest. That's the best way I know how to describe it to people, because, you know, we're not usually in a situation, the average Joe, you and I, where we really get compound interest. We can take advantage of that, right? It's usually people who have a lot of money who are playing in certain markets that we can't play in. But in the world of cryptocurrency, we have the ability to take advantage of compound interest. So look at it as this interest stacked on top of interest. Okay, it's not like it's a static number and a static interest. It's interest stacked on top of interest, stacked on top of interest. That's how you have to look at it. Okay, and in order to get the ball rolling, the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take for you to make those gains. The quicker you act, the quicker you'll get those gains. That's just essentially how that's going to work. But you have a floor price that we talked about. We'll look up what it is, but I believe it's about 29 bucks right now. Now, I did say here, a little bit incorrectly, that that's the lowest price it can ever drop to. Theoretically, it can drop lower than the floor price. However, like I said, first of all, I would expect that to never happen. That's like saying Bitcoin's going to go back down to 50 bucks, okay? A, it's probably never going to happen. Even B, if it did, it could drop below. It's just that there's such an arbitrage there that it would be a wick. It would get bought up quicker than you'd probably even be able to put a buy order in, okay? The reason it trades at that value is, you know, number one, you have supply and demand. That's what drives everything. This is still a speculative market, regardless of what anyone tells you. There's not big mainstream adoption yet. Mostly the yield is drawing that, but the price of OHM is allowed to float higher than what it's actually backed by. I don't believe this is something you should be concerned with. Now, obviously, on August 9th, when I made this tweet, this $419, okay? Let's go down here. I'm going to skip this part here. It's not important. But, I mean, there are some liquidity pool tokens that are also used as part of the Treasury as well, is essentially what I was trying to say in here. So what is bonding? What is 3-3? Why do you keep seeing 3-3 everywhere? Like, I first saw this, I'm like, why? What is this 3-3 thing? Because I first saw it and I thought somebody made a typo or something. I realized everybody was doing it and I couldn't figure out what was going on. It's what's called game theory, kind of gamification of something. It's just basically a cool way of visualizing the activities inside of OHM that help the protocol and ultimately help you and I as investors. All it means is you buy, you stake. That's it. So, you know, if we were to look at this visualization that Olympus DAO has on their website, you can see here what it means, right, to do some of these activities. 3-3 if you sell, 1, and so on. I mean, if you just buy and sell, it's negative 3-3. The best thing you could do for the protocol is to buy and stake, because it locks up the supply. So the supply is locked up, creating more buy pressure, and ultimately raising the price, helping the protocol. Okay, this will be on their website. I'll link to this as well. Bonding is a little different, and bonding is look. There's been a lot of hard forks of OHM because everybody thinks they can steal an idea and do something better. I'm not going to even bring up the other ones. Okay. I am not a big fan of copy and paste forks. Okay, even the forks themselves, I'm not always a fan of forks. Just kind of depends on the reason behind. But when you have forks, that's clearly just a copy and paste, a copycat, nothing original. They're just literally stealing the idea and rebranding it. It's like, yeah, I'm not a fan of that. And you'll notice most of those will fail. Okay, I know Clima is a little different, and maybe I'll do a video on Clima later, but other ones that I won't even mention, they're just trying to copy something, and they're trying to piggyback on the success of Olympus DAO. But as the old saying in the community says, you can't fork the community. You can only fork the code. Okay, so good luck with that. So sort of like I can make a knockoff of, you know, some product and private label. It doesn't mean I'm going to get that customer base. There's a big difference, right? Very big difference. That loyalty, the intelligence in the community, those are things you can't just copy and paste, fortunately for us. But bonding, when you participate in bonding, what you're doing is you are giving Olympus DAO an asset. So they've got this treasury, right? They've got the treasury backing OHM. Well, how do you grow that? In other words, how do you get the backing to go from $29 to $539 so that one day, I don't know how long it'll take, but one day the price could never drop below this because the treasury's backing it. How do you get to that point? How do you grow that treasury in a way where you can incentivize your investors to help you? That's a unique proposition, but they've solved it through bonding, one of many ways. What you're doing is you're giving them the assets in their treasury. So DAI, liquidity pool tokens, FRAX, etc., all the stuff we just mentioned. And in exchange for that, they give you OHM at a discounted price. Okay, it takes a few days, so there's a little bit of a risk. Price drops, you still have to buy it at the price that you agreed to. Okay, so there's a risk there. So you do it when the return is greater than it is to stake. So if you're putting in a lot of money, you might go and purchase a bond, get OHM at maybe a 5 or 10% discount, and then take it and stake it. Right? You got it cheaper, you got the same amount. You spent a lot of money, so that discount is a big discount now, and it makes sense, They do it because when you give them those assets, it goes into the treasury, and this is why OHM is a self-healing and self-replicating system with a constant feedback loop. I'm not going to post that image that keeps floating around about feedback loops, by the way, in OHM. If you're in the community, you know what I'm talking about. I hope that kind of mostly makes sense. Again, 80-20 rule. I'm not even scratching the surface. I mean, when I say we're just scratching the surface, this is not even scratching the surface. I'm trying to give you a 1,000-foot view, enough information, 80-20, for you to make a decision. Okay, this makes sense, I'm going to go buy this, or this makes sense but I'm not interested, or this doesn't make sense and I don't buy it, whatever. Okay, that's where the 80-20 rule comes into play. So there's a few reasons why I like OHM, and I'll give you a couple things that are, possibly things to consider that might be concerning. I'm doing an air quote, but you can't see me. And number one, they own their own liquidity. Again, big deal. This is a big deal, okay? Many protocols, they rely on third parties to provide liquidity. They usually rent that from them. In this case, OHM has basically bought it. They basically purchased that liquidity, and I might go in more into that later, but just know that's rare, that's not normal, that's unusual, okay? And that makes OHM, that just by itself makes OHM unique, okay? You have this endless feedback loop inside of OHM. So we talked about what bonds are and how it works at the Treasury. You purchase a bond, those assets go into the Treasury. This allows OHM to become backed more and more by assets, which eventually raises that floor price that we talked about, which is also known as the risk-free value, RFV, from whatever it is now, $29. It can go up and up and up and up and up. Okay, and that part of that's going to tie into Olympus Pro as well. So, you have people buying and they stake to lock up the supply. It benefits everyone. And then you've got people filling the treasury. I mean, it's genius. They have found a way to incentivize the backing to grow. I mean, the people that are behind OHM, you've got some brain power here. I mean, you've got some people that have really thought about this. I mean, you've got some people who clearly know something about economics. I mean, I could not have come up with a system like this. So, I mean, this is not your typical, rug pull type of scenario. First of all, let's address that for a minute. If you were going to rug pull this, just logically, when would you have done it? By looking at this chart. If you were the creators of this and you just wanted to make a quick rug pull, when would you have done it? Would you have done it when the price was up here back in April, right? 5 months ago? So why, if you're going to rug pulls, why would you allow the price to come all the way back down to $200? Actually, I think we went as low as 162. Why would you allow that? Right? Logically, you're going to put this much effort, this much thought, this much intentional emphasis on growing this economy to rug pull it after it has dropped like 80% from its previous high? That doesn't make any sense. This logically. I know people are skeptical of things, high yield, all this kind of stuff. Just think independently for a minute. Just think logically about that. Does that make any sense? If it doesn't make any sense, it's probably because it doesn't. It's probably because it's not true. So, I like the fact that it's algorithmic, it's free floating, right? It's allowed to float above its value, it's not pegged. So you got its supply and demand, let the market determine what the price should be, which is going to be very high, by the way, in my opinion, not financial advice. It's self-healing, we already talked about what that looks like, okay? It mints or burns tokens as needed to control the price. We talked about it actually has to go down to below $1 for that to happen. It still allows a floating value for supply and demand. It's hard to understand. Hey, look, a lot of people look at that as a negative. I look at that as a positive. Why? It keeps the tire kickers out. This is not Shiba. This is not Doge. This isn't some stupid dog coin that doesn't have any value. Right? That's basically an ERC20 token that does nothing. Does nothing other than share memes of dogs. Okay, this actually has a team that has really put a lot of thought behind the economy. There's an economy behind OHM. Okay, many coins don't have an economy; they just have fanboys. Okay, so I love the fact that it's hard to understand because everyone thinks it's a scam. It's like Strong. People think it's a scam. That's why I love it. If you bet against the herd, you most likely win. I've always won in my life betting against the herd. Even, the herd in crypto. I mean, you wouldn't think crypto as the herd, but there is a herd inside. It's like a subgroup, right? There's a subgroup inside of crypto that thinks everything's a scam. So I love the fact that it's hard to understand. There's been a lot of thought, I already said this, into how the protocol works. There's a lot of intention to making sure that the protocol is backed by more and more assets over time, so it incentivizes the backing and the purchasing and the locking up of the value. Okay, it's like burning the candle at both ends. I did make a statement here about the APY, however, it's not that it's not true anymore, it's just that because we've kind of voted on a difference with the yield, I'm going to get into that in a minute, you can almost disregard this. I mean, it's still true, but it's just talking about the runway. I mean, Glassnode did a study that said that OHM could support a 40,000% APY for 6 months. It's kind of irrelevant at this point because we've made a change to that. I did mention your yield will be adjusted over time. It's just kind of obvious. Nothing lasts like that forever. So some concerns. There's concerns I'm going to tell you. The team's mostly anonymous. We do know some people. Some of them are on Twitter, by the way. We do know some people, but mostly anonymous. We don't know the whole team behind it. So people love to pick on that and say, oh, I don't invest in anything with anonymous teams. Oh, really? You don't? Well, do you know who Satoshi Nakamoto is? Well, did you know that your coin likely follows Bitcoin? So kind of in theory, you may not own Bitcoin directly, but you sort of invest in it indirectly. Did you know that? Right? Arthur Brito? We've never seen a picture of who Arthur Brito is. He was one of the developers of the XRP Ledger. We don't know exactly who he is. We know there's a person. We don't know who he is. Sonny King, founder of the proof of stake algorithm. You know what any of those people are? But yet we use their technology. We invest in their technology, even if we don't do it directly. So I don't really see that big of a concern about a quasi-anonymous team. Doesn't necessarily mean a rug pull or a Ponzi, okay? I don't love that it's an ERC20 token because now you get the gas fees and all the other nonsense. That's the one of the things I don't like. I would have liked if they had their own blockchain, but I understand that's a lot of work. Those are really the only concerns I have. There is some common questions I'll get to, I should say. Is there a minimum? No. You can literally buy a tenth of a coin and stake a tenth of a coin if you want. Okay, bonds, I believe, have a minimum. I have not done much bonding. I can't recall if they have a minimum, so forgive me for that. You can stake and unstake at any point you want. There's no lockup period. You can buy on Uniswap and SushiSwap. I should also say BitTrue has it as well. I would avoid BitTrue unless you absolutely have to buy it on there, just because of liquidity sucks usually. Okay, you stake on the official dashboard. It's also where you do all of the bonding. We'll get to that in a minute. And I, of course, went through my 80-20 rule here. Okay, I'll leave some other tweets that I would recommend looking at, some other profiles that you should look at. I did run across this tweet yesterday from Adam Patel 23. Sometimes you read these tweets and you're like, what? It's so counterintuitive to what your mind would tell you, right? You know, knee-jerk reaction type of thing. I actually can't wait till OHM lowers the APY to less than 4 digits. That's extremely bullish. Why? Why would that be bullish? Most people would wonder. And I thought this guy gave a great answer. Lower APY means less OHM is being created due to inflation. So less OHM can be unstaked and swapped. So basically, less can be sold. If your entire goal is to accumulate OHM passively just to dump it, it'd be harder. If you wait too long to get in with the yield dropping and the inflation going up, that's why I talk about compound interest is on a bell curve. You have to, the earlier you get in, the more rewards you reap. The longer you wait, the longer it'll take for you to make that kind of return. So that's the key. But people who get in later, who aren't making as much because they got in later and the APY has dropped, you're going to see less. Selling pressure, right? So this is my dashboard here for Olympus. You just basically come in here, you go into MetaMask, you get the OHM into MetaMask, you connect your wallet. You have to approve first and stake second. Okay? 2 different transactions. So in here, you see a few things. Obviously on the left side, you got your dashboard. It's going to give you all sorts of information about the market cap, the price, the supply, and you're going to see a whole bunch of widgets load down here. That's going to give you all that data that I was showing you. And there's actually more than this, but these are just the ones that they have embedded onto the dashboard, right? Like you can see there's look at 93, over 93% of the supply is staked right now. So even higher than when I made my post. Even higher. I actually think during that dip, we went down as low as like 89%. Sounds like a lot, but for OHM, it's not, right? So you could just see all the available runway at the current rate, like how long could the existing APY actually last if it stayed stagnant. That's not going to happen anymore, but holders over time, look at the holders. Look at the amount of people buying OHM as time goes on. People are figuring out what it is. Imagine if you'd have bought down here when there's 1,500 holders as opposed to where are we at now? Almost 15,000. Look at the amount of liquidity that is owned by OHM. This is crazy. Look at this graph. Look at this, it goes straight up. And it's like so hard. You can't even see any blue anymore. It's like 99%. Right? And you can see risk-free value, the market value, etc. This is just a really good dashboard that you want to come and check out. Okay? So on the left here, you can bond if you wish to bond. You'll look at the discount. Don't participate in these ones that say negative. I don't even know why they're on here to be negative necessarily, but you're actually losing money doing these. So you just want to, mostly this one, the OHM DAO liquidity pool, is going to be the one you want to participate in if you want to bond. I don't do much bonding if you want to bond. Okay? If you want to stake, you just come in here and stake. Now let's look at this. Let's look at some of these numbers for a minute. So you got 7,400% APY. Actually, you know what? Really quick, before we go into that, I do want to look at the governance protocol that we just voted on before we get into this. On the left side here, you got the governance, you got documents, you got the forum. There's actually some voting that happens under the forum as well, and I think it gets passed to the governance. But we're going to go into the governance and look at that proposal. And the proposal was OIP 18, which essentially allows the yield to drop as the inflation rises to create a more sustainable protocol. So what that means is, as you're locking up your OHM, staking it, well, that's your rewards are coming from an algorithmic minting of new OHM. So it's technically inflated, right? So as the inflation reaches certain thresholds, the yield is going to drop. Okay. Now, we're in between 1 million and 10 million right now. So this could theoretically, right at 10 million, go as low as about 1,000%. This is the total supply, by the way. So where are we right now? We're currently 2.2 million. Okay, 2.2 million right here. So once this number were to hit 10 million, obviously you would see something like a 1,000%. And it's going to drop between now and every time one's minted and so on. Okay. So I'll link to this as well, but come in here and kind of just look at this graph so you know what this is going to look like, right? This is not as bad as you think, by the way. And another thing, as the inflation rises, as the yield drops, yes, compound interest is great on a bell curve, but just the fact that the yield's dropping means less are being minted as time goes on. Just, realistically, mathematically, that's how it's going to work. If you have 15,000 stakers and you got 8,000% and that lasts forever, then you're going to just explode in inflation. But if it's dropping and it's eventually down to 100%, you're, at maybe 100,000 holders at 100%, you're just minting less than you would be if you had 100,000 holders at 8,000%. You get what I'm saying? So I'm going to show you some math about, because now some of the calculators, I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, I don't believe that they include the inflation part. So it's kind of a moving target now. So how do you calculate it? I'm going to give you a very ultra conservative way to calculate this. That should put you in a worst case scenario, so it can only go up from there, okay, give or take. I'm going to show you that in a minute, but come here and study this. And by the way, just come in here and study the proposals in general. Anytime something's added, I recommend you come in here and vote. Make your voice heard. So reward rate and frame reduction is what you want. Framework reduction, I should say. So let's go back here. So what do we got? So we got 3 rebases a day every 8 hours, okay, for 3 rebases a day. I'm going to show you how to calculate this just with a simple calculator real quick here, okay? So what you're going to need is you're going to need a scientific calculator. So if you're using Windows, you need to open up the calculator and hit scientific. So typically most people are on standard. You want to hit scientific. Okay, because you need to calculate exponents. So you'll see here how you've got 7,432.8%. You've got the rebase. So your balance is essentially, all this is the amount of OHM that's in your wallet in MetaMask, not staked. Okay. The next amount is SOHM, which just stands for staked OHM. It becomes staked OHM once you stake it. The next line item is next reward amount, which is the next rebase. This is how much you're going to get. Next reward yield is basically a calculation of the next reward amount. So basically you're going to get 0.3954%. The next rebase that takes place. And over a 5-day period, you will receive 6% in return, essentially, based on the compound interest. So again, this is based on compound interest. So the moment you start withdrawing, you change the mathematics. The mathematics change once you pull OHM out. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing your calculations. Okay, this is based on the fact you're leaving it in. Okay. So let's talk about the calculations here for a minute. I'll show you a simplistic way to calculate this. Maybe you're not an investor yet and you're like, how do I calculate this? What does this look like? I'll show you real quick. So you see how you got this is called your rebase amount, yield I should say, sorry. This is called next reward yield. What this means is every 8 hours, this percentage is what increases by your staked amount. So I'm going to round this. Let's just say we got 25 OHM staked, right? We got 0.3954. Okay, now you got 3 rebases a day, 30 days in a month. So that's 90 rebases in a month, correct? So what you're going to do, And a lot of people get this calculation wrong. I'm going to show you the right way to do it. So you see 0.3954. What you're going to do is hit in your calculator 1.003954 to the power of, so you're going to see in Windows, I don't know about a Mac, but in Windows you got XY, which is going to add the exponent. So to the power of however many rebases. So let's just say a 30-day period. That's 3 rebases a day, 30 days a month, 90 rebases in a month. You're going to do 90, and you get 1.42, we'll just call it. Okay? So now you multiply that by the amount you have staked as of right now. So let's just say 25. So we're going to take 1.42. I'm just rounding it down to 1.42. And you're going to multiply that by 25. So what it means is that if this yield were to stay exactly where it is right now, which it will not, but I'm just showing you how this calculation generally works without inflation included, you would have 35.5 in 1 month. If you subtract your currently staked amount of 25, you made 10.5 OHM in 1 month. The prices of OHM is $539. Then you got 10.5 multiplied by $539, $5,600 in 1 month. I'm not suggesting you sell every month. I'm just showing that's the value that would increase, okay? The moving target by itself, and that's not including gas fees, but you get the point. But with inflation, it does make this a little more of a tricky calculation. So what do I think about that? How do we calculate that? Well, I'm going to show you a very, probably way overly conservative way to calculate it, okay? It's not going to be 100%, but this should put you in a worst case scenario. Okay, so you got our inflation chart, right? As the supply goes up, yield goes down. How do you really calculate this? Well, to be 100% accurate, and not even 100%, to be closer to 100% accurate, what one would have to do is actually see what is the rate of the inflation. And I don't know if that number exists in a chart somewhere. Somebody may be keeping track of that, and if you do, please reach out to me because I want to talk to you. Like, in other words, as the total supply increases, at what rate is it increasing? I would like to know that. I have not been keeping track of it that close, so I don't know. And there might be a SQL command that I can run inside of Dune Analytics in order to pull that off. I just don't know what it is yet. I haven't looked into it enough, but you would want to know that if you wanted to be even more accurate, right? But I'm going to just do the, 80-20 version, let's put it to you that way, the lazy man's version, okay? So right now we are at 0.3954. We're in the middle of September, almost the end of September, 2021, September 18th, right? What I would do, I would start my calculation. Again, this is going to be overly conservative, way overly conservative. I would start my calculation at 0.38. Just because I don't know the exact rate that it took for us to go to 0.4 to 0.3954, which is basically half. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's 2 weeks into the month and we can judge it based on a 30-day period. I don't know. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at 0.38, and on top of that, I'm going to lower it by 0.01% every month. And I made a spreadsheet, a very quick spreadsheet just before I got started, that shows what this looks like. Okay, I might share this if you guys want. I just threw this together in like 2 minutes before I started. So let's say you start out with the amount that I have. Right now, this doesn't mean I'm not going to put any more OHM in. It just means this is what I have right now. Okay. If I started with this and we were at 0.38 for 30 days, again, will 0.38 last for 30 days? I don't know. I'm estimating here, and also we're assuming 0.3800 exactly, not 388, 387, 385, and so on. So that's why this is not 100% accurate. There's a lot of reasons this is not 100%. This is probably like 75 to 80% accurate, something like that, maybe 90. I don't know. But really, if you want to know, you got to have to know the rate of increase in the inflation. But for the easy calculation, this is what I did. I said, okay, what's the most conservative worst case scenario I can put myself in? Okay, And again, if a calculator exists that takes into account the inflation, let me know. I will share it for sure. And if you want me to share this, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll put something together and share it. I'll pretty it up or something. But anyway, OHM before is what I had before. OHM after 30 days is pretty self-explanatory. This is what the yield is. And this is what the rebase amount is at that time. So, for example, if you start at, I'm going to use round numbers here. Okay. So you start at 25 and you got 0.38 for 30 days, assuming that would be the worst case in the next 30 days, right? Which is, again, really a worst case, not even accurate, because we're already about 0.015% higher than that, but you get the point. Easy math here. So after 30 days, they'd have 36, right? This is just for information if you want to know what the yield looks like with these percentages. So then the next month, you go down to 0.37%. So you're going to take your previous amount and add it to the before. So you're going to take the after in this month and add it to the before in this month. Run the calculation again for another 30 days. This is how compound interest works. It's just that they are making it a little easier with their APY here. This is based on a compound interest amount, right? Then you're going to take that and run it at 0.37. Puts you at 50. Then you're going to take that amount, put it down here, and run it at 0.36. You get 69. Then you're going to take that, run it down here at 0.35 for another month. So this is a year time of doing this. I hope this makes sense. Now, if the calculation holds, 25 can go to about 850 in 1 year, even with the worst case scenario of inflation. And this is worse than the worst case scenario. This is not even an accurate number. It's actually going to be probably much higher than this, I would imagine, much higher. Because one thing I'm not taking into account is as the yield drops and as inflation goes up, like I said before, that's actually minting less and less. So technically it would take much longer to get to this amount. Like we might very well end at like here instead, which would make this probably well over 1,000. But this is like, again, worst case scenario, worse than that. So then you look at this and you say, okay, what's a realistic price point in a year? Now that's a little hard because OHM is still new and we don't know how it's going to do in a bear market. So there's all these factors, right? But if you make this a long-term hold, man, I mean, if you actually, I'll just show you something really quick here. Let's go back to CoinGecko. I don't want to make a point of something. I shared this on Twitter the other day. If OHM were to become a top 20, what's a top 20? Top 20 is wrapped Bitcoin, right? There's a website called marketcapof.com. So if we take OHM and we plug it into here and we give it the market cap of, I think we were wrapped Bitcoin, right? Hang on, I gotta find wrapped, there it is. No, it's wrapped Bitcoin. You got a $5,500 price, which is, by the way, only a 10x from here. That's not even that hard to believe, a 10x. I mean, that could happen in this bull market. I mean, I'm not saying it will, but, especially with the attention this is garnering, I mean, this could happen in this bull market. More than this could happen in the bull market, right? So if you just had half of this, let's just say you had a $2,500 price. Again, I'm going worst case of worst case here. It's 850 OHM, which is still even lower than this by a $2,500 price. Now let me ask you a question. If you had 2.1 million, theoretically, just as an example, in OHM, and the yield dropped to a devastating, I'm being sarcastic here, 100%, would you be upset if that you were earning 50 to 100% on $2 million? Would you be upset with that? Because, by the way, that'd make you about 177 grand a month if that were to happen. So you get, the point I'm trying to make here is this. With the longer you wait to get into OHM, the longer you wait for this to take effect, the more you're paying the bill of compound interest rather than compound interest paying you. Okay, so one little bonus thing. I was going to be done with the video, but Olympus Pro was announced less than a day ago. everybody was talking about what is Olympus Pro, including me. I was like, what the heck is Olympus Pro? Everyone's talking about, oh, well, Olympus Pro. So they go, I'm going to link this in the description. You can read through this. Okay, if you want, they talk about what the problem is first, and they talk about the solution to the problem. So what it is essentially liquidity as a service. Now this is really cool. So you can also call it bonds as a service. That's be like the layman's term. So they're going to take their bond initiative, their secret sauce behind growing their treasury, and they're going to provide that as a service to other protocols that want to do the same thing. Okay. Now, you may ask, well, why do that when another protocol can just do it themselves? Well, if another protocol could do it themselves, they would have done it themselves. It's much easier to buy or participate in a plug-and-play solution than it is to try and make your own. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. Now, how does this help OHM? This helps OHM because as they onboard customers to Olympus Pro, the treasury of OHM is going to grow. So the treasury currently is going to get 3.3% on all of the volume. Okay, so this is so what they're doing is this. They're taking the bonding structure that has incentivized the growing of the treasury, which incentivizes the growing of the backing of OHM. They're offering that on a large, almost to like a business scale. So look at the bonding aspect as a straight to consumer model, and look at Olympus Pro as straight to business model. It's almost as if they're going to other protocols and saying, hey, here's our bonding system. We'll give you this system. Look what it's done for us, because we've already tested it, by the way. Wink, wink. And now we're going to take 3%, and that might change over time, of that volume, and we're going to put it back into our treasury. So you can see the power of this. I mean, I would imagine this floor price, this risk-free value, to just continue to grow and grow and grow more. So again, as you think of success, start to picture success. Obviously we want to visualize. We want to look at how we want things to turn out. I'm a big believer in that. However, look at things how they will likely turn out. You're going to go through bumps in the road. You're going to go through all these difficulties. But at the end of the day, guess what? You end up at the exact same place. So I hope this helps. I hope this helps you understand OHM, at least on an 80-20 level, at least on a 1,000-foot view level. And let me know in the comments, are you going to get OHM? Are you already in OHM? Did this help? Did this demystify some things? Do you have anything you want to add to this? I'm open to conversation. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.